an early age. My parents are music fans, especially my dad, and it was just always part of the day. I fell in love with The Point by Harry Nilsson when I was about 3 or 4 years old. Talk about a comfortable shirt, or maybe more appropriately, that warm blanket you could wrap yourself in when you were small to make yourself feel safe. The Point perfectly summed up what I felt like most of my childhood. If you don't know the record, it tells the story of Oblio, who was born with a round head in a land where everyone else had pointed heads, and everything around them had a point. Even Oblio's beloved dog, Arrow, was pretty damn pointy. My favorite song from the record, Me and My Arrow, still can bring tears to my eyes if it catches me at the right moment. That line, "In the morning when I wake up, she may be gone, I don't know," gets me every time. But back to the story, Oblio tries to hide his pointlessness from the townsfolk and ultimately gets banished from the land of Point and sets off to the pointless forest. For an only child caught in the middle of multiple ideologies about what was the right way to act and behave, this was very powerful to me. Like probably everyone else on the planet, I often wondered, what the hell am I supposed to be doing here anyway? There was comfort, though, in listening to the story of Oblio and his travels, and he discovers that everyone and everything has a point. It's just not always so easy to see or understand at the moment. Sometimes I feel like this shaped my own musical journey. I'm always looking to either write a song or find a song that proves my point. It's one of my all-time favorite records, and as a kid I could listen to it over and over, and I still know all the words. I'd often ask my dad to play it while I was falling asleep, and I remained fiercely loyal to it until somewhere in the 3rd grade. We listened to a lot of music when I was growing up. My dad liked to make mixtapes with his 8-track machine for our many road trips. Yeah, you could do that. He even made one of all my favorite songs. It had things like The Diary of Horace Wimp by ELO, and lots of Bee Gees and other Nilsson and Hoyt Axton. People might have called that an eclectic mix, but to me it was just a bunch of things I liked in the 70s. Looking back, I realize I've always been a sucker for a song that tells a great story or has a great bass line. In '79, though, I became an official music consumer. I started buying, in many cases, and attempting to buy, in other cases, 45s of my favorite songs, starting with the Knack's My Sharona. The Smitty's store near our apartment in Sunny Slope had all the latest hits. And Sunny Slope. 12th Street and Butler. And I started spending more time in the record section there than in the toy section. The shift had begun for me. I remember my dad telling me I couldn't buy Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin' by Journey because I wasn't old enough. He must have thought that the mature themes of the song were too advanced for me. And I probably wasn't quite ready to articulate that what I really liked was the song built tension and released it in a really appealing way. I bought Tusk by Fleetwood Mac instead, and now I wonder if I should thank my dad for not letting me walk down the Journey path. He might have saved me from a lifetime of feathered hair and writing shitty ballads on a Fender Strat. Either way, he did me a favor. By saying I was too young to listen to Journey, that one small act on his behalf, one that I doubt he even remembers, taught me a valuable lesson. In my opinion, good rock and roll is not, nor should it ever be, safe. Inherently, I think I've always known that safe rock and roll sucks. And my dad telling me I wasn't ready for Journey just hammered home the idea that shaped much of my own musical path from that point forward. If music is something I need to be protected from, then I want all the dangerous music I can find, because the scarier the music is, the more I like it. When the Knack played the fair that year, the Arizona State Fair, in '79, I begged my dad to take me. It was fitting to my 10-year-old brain that the Knack should be my first concert. They were my band and I loved them. We made our way to the fair and into the Coliseum. That night, the Madhouse on McDowell was nothing like it was for Suns games, which we went to on a regular basis. This was something brand new to me. It was dark and smoky. There was a huge crowd since the Knack was one of the most popular bands in the country at the time. We had to move from our first seats since the kids in front of us were blatantly smoking weed, and my dad didn't want me to be around it. I thought this was odd, since the exact same smell came from his room late at night, but he was just doing his job the best he could and protecting me from things I wasn't supposed to know about or understand. I now know that stuff is just parenting 101, and all parents walk the line between savior and hypocrite from time to time. I wish I remembered more about the Knack show, but I do remember that it was awesome and my ears rang on the way home. It was a night that cemented the lifelong goal in me to get on the stage. To this day, I still want to make loud boom boom noises for people as often as possible. A couple years later, my friends Kevin and Mark came home from their annual trip to California with 2 records that would change my life completely. The Sex Pistols' Nevermind the Bollocks and Decline of Western Civilization soundtrack. I'd heard of punk rock and probably heard bits and pieces of it here and there in movies and such, but I'd never actually held one of the records in my hand. Just saying the word sex and pistols together made me feel dirty, and I loved it. When I heard Lee Ving talking shit to the crowd before the Fear songs on the Decline soundtrack, I got goosebumps. This was where it was at for me from that point forward, even if I had no idea how to be a punk yet. It'd be a few more years before I started wearing the punk rock uniform, and looking back, I can't believe there was a whole scene happening here in town I had no idea about. As a junior high kid wearing OP shorts and lightning bolt shirts and slip-on Vans every day, having a secret relationship with underground music was like having the best secret ever. At that point, I didn't have any close friends who were getting into music like I was, and it was lonely at times for sure. With no older brother or sister to show me the ropes, I'd have been eaten alive in the early Phoenix scene, even though a lot of those folks are my friends and peers now. Getting more and more into music made me feel like Oblio again. At a young age, I was already on the road to music snobbery. This was way before I knew what that meant or could have defined it. I started getting really interested in what other people were listening to and wondered, do they know there's a bunch of cool stuff out there? Part of me hoped they did, and part of me was glad they didn't. I wanted people's heads to remain pointy, while mine got, at least in my opinion, more well-rounded. We had On TV in those days, which you might remember because it was an HBO competitor. And somewhere around that time, they started showing Erg, A Music War. I discovered a whole new crop of bands to follow. Then MTV started up, and Walla Voodoo's Mexican Radio forever etched an imprint on my soul after I saw the video one day. Finding a new band to love, even if it's at the moment they burn brightest, in those days, even now, is like discovering buried treasure. The journey's challenging at times, and it was much harder back in the day before the internet, but the reward is awesome. And I've never ever found it to be pointless. And safe rock and roll still sucks.